It started with a retreat, not from a brutal artillery barrage, not after a drone swarm, but from nothing. A group of Russian troops stationed in eastern Luhansk in early 2025 received urgent orders: evacuate immediately. Ukrainian forces were advancing. Satellite data confirmed it. Intercepted chatter validated it. And their own sensors, those built into decades of Russian military infrastructure, were screaming one message: the Ukrainians were coming. So they left, quickly, abandoning equipment, dismantling hardpoints, flattening their own comms towers in a hasty scuttle. But here's the twist. There were no Ukrainians, no convoy, no infantry column, no impending strike. The entire scenario had been fabricated, digitally woven together by Ukrainian cyber operatives. The base they feared was a phantom, the advance, an illusion. What they were really running from was their own data, poisoned by an enemy who had learned to weaponize Russia's dependency on its own systems. That wasn't just psychological warfare, it was algorithmic warfare. And it worked. In the last 12 months, Ukraine has quietly mastered a new battleground: digital deception. Not merely using misinformation for propaganda purposes, but sculpting entire alternate realities inside the minds of Russian commanders. While the world focused on drones, trenches, and supply lines, a parallel war has been raging in the shadows, one where Ukraine doesn't need firepower to force a retreat. Just a few lines of code, a hijacked server, a forged signal, a deep fake, and perhaps most terrifying of all, knowledge of how Russia thinks. This isn't just a tactical shift, it's an existential one. The classic image of war as a brutal, muddy, physical grind is being redefined. In 2025, Ukraine has made the invisible visible. It's creating ghosts, digital hallucinations that throw the enemy off balance, sow doubt, and sometimes lead them to collapse under the weight of their own confusion. Consider how this works. Modern armies rely on GPS, satellite feeds, encrypted maps, AI surveillance, and telemetry data from thousands of sensors. Every tank, every missile launcher, every drone is part of a broader mesh, a real-time battlefield network. That network is supposed to give commanders clarity. Where are we? Where are they? What's the threat level? But clarity becomes chaos when the data is wrong, and Ukraine figured that out early. They began hijacking weak GPS signals around the Kharkiv front, confusing Russian drones so badly they began crashing into their own supply trucks. Then they moved deeper, spoofing comms systems so Russian soldiers received fake orders mid-battle. One infamous clip, leaked through back channels, showed a Russian tank unit spinning in circles, literally lost on the battlefield, trapped inside a fake perimeter created by altered GPS coordinates. Cybersecurity expert Oleg Turchenko from NATO's Strategic Command summed it up bluntly. Ukraine is not just fighting the war on the ground. They are fighting a war inside Russia's military nervous system. And this nervous system is fragile. In March 2025, Ukraine launched a campaign that may well go down in cyber warfare history: Operation Phantom Divide. It started with what seemed like routine disinformation, fake maps of Ukrainian buildups near Mariupol. But behind the scenes, Ukraine's cyber units went further. They tapped into Russian battlefield management systems through a compromised maintenance drone captured months earlier. Using that access, they fed false reports, enemy vehicle clusters, radio intercepts, even biometric readings that mimicked real Ukrainian soldiers. The Russians bought it. They began deploying reinforcements to a completely empty zone. But it didn't stop there. Deepfake videos, carefully constructed with AI voice and facial mimicry, showed captured Russian generals confirming Ukrainian troop positions that didn't exist. In a stunning twist, a Russian general ordered a fallback from a sector after seeing a video of himself, yes, himself, allegedly being tortured and leaking classified troop info. It wasn't him, but it was convincing enough to cause panic. Think about that for a moment. This is a war where you can no longer trust your own reflection, where the battlefield doesn't just deceive your eyes, it rewrites your judgment. A war where what you see might be a lie, where what you feel, fear, urgency, betrayal, is being engineered. That's power, and Ukraine's using it with precision, not recklessly, not for vanity, but tactically, directed at choke points, retreat zones, morale weak spots. They've learned that a demoralized enemy is 10 times easier to beat than a defiant one. And nothing demoralizes like betrayal from within, orders that contradict logic, videos that undermine chain of command, retreats based on ghosts. What's fascinating is how low-tech many of these operations really are. In one operation reported by OSINT specialists, Ukrainian hackers used nothing but Telegram groups and AI-generated voices to simulate a false emergency evacuation drill in Belgorod. The panic spilled over into real military communications. 2 battalions were pulled from the Ukrainian border to respond to what was essentially a prank, albeit a very dangerous one. The Ukrainian playbook is simple. They understand how Russia's systems talk to each other, and they manipulate those conversations. They're not trying to beat Russia by being stronger. They're trying to beat them by being smarter. And it's working. Russian morale is cracking, not because of battlefield losses alone, but because of confusion. Because soldiers don't know if the orders they receive are real. Because commanders don't know if the enemy they see on their screen is a simulation. Because generals don't know if the secure channels they're speaking on have been compromised. That uncertainty festers. It grows. It becomes paranoia. And paranoia eats armies alive. By contrast, Ukraine's command structure has tightened. Its cyber units, once underfunded and dispersed, have been centralized into a new elite force called Chimera Division. Trained in both offensive hacking and psychological ops, these teams combine cyber sleuthing with battlefield intent. Their goal isn't just disruption, it's transformation, to turn digital illusions into real-world strategic gains. And behind that lies a fundamental truth. Ukraine knows how Russia thinks. Years of cultural proximity, shared language, inherited doctrine, it all plays into Ukraine's advantage. They don't just speak the language linguistically, they speak it militarily. They anticipate Russian reaction patterns with uncanny accuracy. They know that if you feed the right signal into the system, Russia will respond predictably. In effect, Russia's biggest weakness is its own predictability. It's built a rigid, top-down chain of command reliant on clean data and system-wide trust. Ukraine is corrupting that trust. One hack, one fake signal, one viral deepfake at a time. Some call this unfair. Others call it genius. But from a survival standpoint, it's nothing short of necessary. Ukraine is outnumbered, outgunned, and, on paper, outmatched. So they've done what small nations throughout history have done. They've turned asymmetry into an asset. And in 2025, asymmetry doesn't just mean guerrilla tactics. It means controlling the narrative, hijacking the senses, creating mirages so convincing that the enemy reacts to fiction as if it were fact. Which brings us back to the ghost base. That retreat in Luhansk, where Russian forces abandoned a site based on completely fabricated intelligence, wasn't just a victory for Ukraine. It was a message to Moscow, to the world, and to history, that in this war, control isn't always about territory. Sometimes it's about belief, about perception, about owning the moment between a decision and its consequence. And Ukraine owns that moment now. Hit like and subscribe to The Timely Take for more documentary videos like this.